Hey everybody over at movies.com. It is the Schmoes No Movie Show. I'm Christian.
And I am Mark. Christian, this weekend in theaters you have Exodus, Gods and Kings, and you also have the king of stand-up comedy, Chris Rock, in his film Top 5.
What's the better joke? One of the jokes in Top 5 or the fact that you have Joel Edgerton playing an Egyptian? You figure it out.
You know what? This list is called the Top 5, so why don't we base it on Top 5? We're going to talk about the top 5 stand-up comedians that have become film actors.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay.
What was your idea?
Well, see, you let him in on the joke. Here we go. It is the top 5 stand-up comedians turned actors. And the way we kind of thought about this was, yes, awards and nominations, there's absolutely come to play certain careers, not just how much money you made box office, but what you did and accomplished as an actor, as well as stand-up comedy.
Yeah, you had to be a good comic. You can't just do a couple open mics and then be in movies. You got to really be a stand-up comic and have 2 specials that are maybe 2 of the best of all time. That's what our number 5 gentleman did. Eddie Murphy, who had Delirious, he had Raw, and then he started making some movies.
He made a couple movies, Beverly Hills Cop, 48 Hours, and he had a great film career. People still consider Eddie Murphy one of the greatest stand-up comedians of all time. I don't think he had enough under his belt to be labeled in the greatest of all time stand-up comedians. He certainly was awesome, and those 2 specials were awesome.
Yeah, I mean, poor Eddie, because he was plucked from the clubs as a very young kid to star in Saturday Night Live, and he completely saved that show. So in my opinion, he's the greatest cast member in the history of Saturday Night Live. And you see his storytelling ability on stage in stuff like Delirious. And then his film career really took off. He went back and did Raw when he was already arguably the biggest star, not named Michael Jackson, on the planet. And then he quit stand-up, and he hasn't been back since. We always hear rumors every so often that maybe he'll do it again.
All of these comedians that we're going to be mentioning have really turned themselves into something than just a stand-up comedian. And like you said, Eddie Murphy became one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. This next guy, all I got to do is Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was huge on the stand-up scene, and just because he had this raw energy about him and the physical and the way he could just transform a space, and then he went from there, got plucked out and did In Living Color. No one thought that he'd be able to do, even when he transferred into Ace Ventura, from what he was able to do as a dramatic actor, Eternal Sunshine and Spotless Mind, and Truman Show.
Yeah, I mean, because you saw him on, a lot of people met him for the first time on In Living Color. He was the white dude on In Living Color, and before that, he was killing it on the road, but he was an impressionist. And when he threw that material away, when he was opening for Rodney Dangerfield, Rodney told him, hey, you do what you want to do, kid. Just try not to bomb too bad. But that's what happened. He did not have good sets for a while. Then he slowly started to find himself on stage when that all came together in Living Color, and then Ace Ventura just elevated him to $20 million movie status. And today, he's not making that anymore. Nobody is, but every time he lines up in front of the camera in a dramatic role, he's a potential threat to win an Oscar.
All right, then what do we got at number 3?
Number 3 is, I always heard, remember Harris Pete, the door guy at the Comedy Store?
Yeah, they don't.
He always said, maybe they do. He probably threw you out of the club once upon a time. He always said that Michael Keaton was the best comic he had ever seen, because Michael Keaton, he was Michael Douglas, then he changed his name for Showbiz because there's another Michael Douglas already. He became Michael Keaton, moved out to LA, started getting his chops at the Comedy Store, left the stage for the screen in movies like Night Shift.
Well, you can see with Michael Keaton, everything he does, he just has that impeccable timing of everything with the way he does. So you could see that transferring over from stage into acting, but he liked just to perform, and the way he would, well, I gotta, if you're gonna be over there and, and just the way he would move and talk, and
there's a darkness too. There's that comedian edge that he has that I wish I could go back in time and watch him on stage, because I've never seen him do stand-up, but you always hear he was one of the best of his time.
And you transfer over to stuff that Michael Keaton did in film. You look with Beetlejuice, and now he's back again with this comic, a possible Oscar nomination in Birdman.
Yes,
I think he'll be nominated. So he just proves that he had such a transition from stand-up into
superheroes. Yeah.
Number 2. This one's going to be interesting for a lot of people. And you go, wait a minute, how did she get so high up on the list? And we'll tell you in a second. Whoopi Goldberg.
I think she earned being that high on the list because she was a fantastic stand-up. She started out, she would do little clubs and she would do more spoken word stuff.
Also big energy and everything
absolutely,
too.
Yeah, a lot of impressions. And then she started making movies. And the reason why she's number 2 on the list, she's got some trophies, Christian, that nobody else so far that we've talked about has on their mantle, including Oscar.
That's absolutely right. She got nominated and won for
I believe for Ghost.
And I think she got nominated for Color Purple.
Yes.
And both of those movies knocked him out of the park, and she just, Whoopi Goldberg, maybe she didn't dedicate that much time to acting afterwards, but she's been in the movies, and the movies she had an impact for where she was just able to become, she became a huge personality.
You know, every time she's in a film, too, she just lends such a soothing, warm presence when she wants to, and she can also be the funniest person on screen. She's so versatile in everything that she does, which is why, again, I just like having her in entertainment, whether it's as a talk show host or an actress or talking on stage, or like when she was with Comic Relief with Billy Crystal and Robin Williams, it was some of the funniest stuff in the 1980s.
And you might actually see her pop up in top 5 if you're paying attention. And so that would be the #1 comedian turned actor,
Mark Ellis, because he was in a horror movie called Little Effer.
Well, that's true, but you're not #1. #1 would be the late, the great Robin Williams.
Yeah, now Robin Williams, he also won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting, and he was known as a great stand-up comedian, and then he did Mork and Mindy, and he would still, right up until shortly before his untimely death, he'd pop into clubs, and not just pop into clubs and entertain the crowd that night, he would go on tour as a comic. I mean, he had a great tour in 2002, I believe, and in 2008 or 9 after his heart surgery, and he got really personal talking about these things. Then you can also watch his legendary performance in 1986 live at the Met.
I was at the Comedy Store one night where there's a big room at the Comedy Store, and Robin Williams got on stage in front of 250 people or whatnot and didn't use a microphone for an hour to show you what he was able to do. But that also transferred over to everything that he did in his film career. He was that lovable presence. You were always excited anytime you saw him pop on the screen.
Yeah.
Like, you just knew something big was going to come. And Good Will Hunting, if anyone ever deserved to win an Oscar for anything, it was him winning for Good Will Hunting. I watched it recently. And Dead Poet Society is another one I believe he was nominated for.
Yeah.
But you watch him in Good Will Hunting, and he just has, he was able to turn that thing off that he always had. He was able to turn it off. When he needed to turn it on a couple scenes, it was there. But it was that human thing that Robin Williams really did well.
I think the great combination of stand-up and acting is Good Morning Vietnam. Is when he's in that, because he gets to do everything. He gets to be dramatic, but he also gets to be the funniest person in the room. The guy was amazing. He was a legend. You don't get a talent like that coming around again. We miss you, buddy.
Couple honorable mentions. You mentioned before Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal was one.
Absolutely,
one that we could talk about as
Throw
well.
Sandler in there.
Yakov Smirnoff.
Yeah. Richard Pryor is the greatest stand-up of all time.
Yeah.
His film career just never really held up. But he was, look, and him and Gene Wilder had a really good, like Silver Streak. Yeah. Sino Evil is all right. But look, Richard Pryor, God love him. He was in Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy.
Hey, what about me?
Oh, sorry, Jerry. Oh, I like the B movie.
I mean, come on. That's our list. That's what we got. Those are the top 5 comedians turned actors. Do you guys have a different list? If you have the same top 5, but in different order, comment below and tell us exactly what you think.
And make sure you check out Top 5 this weekend in theaters. It's that, and then you have Exodus, Gods, and Kings, the biblical movies. So a lot to choose from as we get towards the Christmas season.
And I believe Wild is coming out in limited release.
Woo! Oscar buzz.